Welcome to The Significance of Wealth with Tom Ruggie, founder and CEO of Destiny Family Office. I'm Marty Salt. In each episode, Tom brings you interesting topics and guests that reflect the independent thinking and tailored strategies he uses with his own multifamily office clients, exploring the evolving landscape of wealth management and ultra-high net worth, shedding light on the large sphere of alternative and private investments, and delving into the world of collecting as both a passion and investment strategy. Ultimately, he looks at success with a broad lens that may well transform the way we all define the significance of wealth.
Welcome to the Significance of Wealth podcast. We are privileged to have two very special guests on today's episode. Legendary baseball artist Dick Perez, who has been called baseball's Picasso, and extraordinary filmmaker Marq Evans, who is creating a documentary on Dick Perez and his journey to baseball's official Hall of Fame artist. Most people who collect baseball cards know the man behind the Diamond Kings, his cards, and his paintings, but may not know the story, which is both fascinating and inspirational. Dick and Marq, I welcome you both and excited to have you both here. What you may or may not know about myself is I have three kind of prongs of my own personal sports memorabilia collection. One is the autographed sports cards. Second is one-of-a-kind type game-used memorabilia. And then third is artwork. I have about 50 pieces of sports memorabilia original artwork. And Dick, about 35 of those 50 are your works of art. So I've been a big collector and a big fan of you for many years. Dick, tell us a little bit about your coming to the United States. You know, what was it like growing up in New York as a youngster, and what impact did baseball have on you as a kid?
My father was killed in a truck accident. He was a peon for one of the little towns in Puerto Rico, and my mother found it very hard to be a single mother in Puerto Rico. We had, by that time, which was the late 40s, early 50s. There was a large migration of Latinos who had moved in, mainly New York. So we had family in the Bronx, and her thought was that she would also, because that was my birth father's original plan, was to move to the United States. And anyway, she made, but she couldn't afford to have us all fly up. So she sent me by myself, 6 years old, put me on a plane. And she told me there will be some people who will come to you. They will know who you are. They will like you. They will hug you. They will kiss you. You can go with them. And that's what happened. I got off the plane, and there's about four people from one of them was my father's sister who was raised in New York. So she didn't have a lot of contact with her brother. So I represented that brother to her too, not only her nephew, but I was her connection to her brother who had a tragic accident, and a brother who she loved, even though she didn't spend a lot of time with him because he was in New York and he was in Puerto Rico. So I was 6 years old, and I lived and raised in the Harlem area. And what I've always said is that baseball was kind of the gateway, because I didn't know baseball was not known to me in Puerto Rico, 6 years old. But I became somehow aware of it in New York, and that's what all the kids in the blocks and in Harlem in the playgrounds and what they did, played softball, baseball, stickball, punchball, and
those were the days.
Yeah, and I started to do that, and even though it took me a little while, I was amazed how I wasn't taught to speak English. You just learn it. When you're that young, your mind is half empty, and you can accumulate a bunch of language words that you couldn't do before. So we learned to develop some great friendships, diversity of races and creeds, and baseball. And I really I really thought I was good, and I wasn't, but I thought I was good. And I was on a championship team that was eventually, when I was about 14 or 15, one of the New York youth organizations had a tournament, and our team won. So I thought, I might be the guy might replace Mickey Mantle. And then you start calculating your batting average, and I came up 188. And I said, that's not going to do it. It didn't come until later when I figured that I got to at least work to get to college somehow and have a profession. And through all this time, I used to draw a lot on my margins of my notebooks. Anywhere I can find a pencil and a piece of paper, I would be drawing. So I had that, but I didn't consider that to be a career for me. I went through the University of the Arts for graphic design, not so much painting or illustration, but for design work, because I felt that was at least a good, viable career that you can translate into making a living. I became a designer, and through meeting people and making the right connections, I became official artist of the Phillies. A lot happened before that, but I became official artist of the Eagles. And I was responsible for the graphic design, for the design of their yearbooks, and I would farm out the illustration when they ever need it. And I figured maybe I'll start doing these. And I started working more on painting and drawing, and with either watercolor and oils and what have you, and found out that there was a way to make a living doing it, because to me, the most important thing besides an ability is the subject matter. And the subject matter of baseball is a great subject matter. A lot of people collect the image, not so much the artist, but the image of if it's well done, right, of their favorite player or their favorite sports idol. So that's what I did and then I met a gentleman who we formed a company, who was connected to the Hall of Fame through being a good friend of Ed Stack, who was the president of the Hall of Fame at the time. And that opened a doorway there.
So you mentioned kind of the collaboration with the Phillies. So the last time that I was at the stadium, there was a whole area dedicated to your artwork. Is that still there?
Oh yeah, it's supposed to be forever. So we'll see what happens.
Okay. All right.
But what's there now, it's supposed to stay there.
Yeah, because I remember walking through there, and at that time, I don't know how many pieces of your artwork that I had, but I was there with some friends, and I just remember walking them through and showing them all the artwork and telling them that that I'm a big collector of you, and we had those conversations. So I just thought that was really cool.
Yeah, well, at the time, the request was to do little portraits of, they just wanted a face of these guys, the subject matter there. And I'm saying to myself, that's little. I mean, it should be more than that. It should be somehow educational. It should be something that tells people something about baseball in the Philadelphia area. Yeah. So I decided to do narratives, people playing, people throwing, people catching, people hitting. And that's why you have the large paintings, and they were okay with that.
Moving from Puerto Rico to New York as a child and falling in love with baseball, just like I did, were you a Yankees fan, or were you? I think at that point, Brooklyn Dodgers were still probably there in New York. Who was your team?
And the Giants too, Willie Mays.
Oh, that's right, the Giants too. Yeah.
The Yankees were my team. Mickey Mantle, he was my idol. He was what America was to me. What I consider I wanted to be American, and he was America, and he just never let me down. When you came up to bat, I mean, at least that's my perception now in memory. I remained a Yankee fan. When I moved to Philly and became associated with the Phillies, obviously I started rooting for them too, because they were nice people, and the teams the time that I was there was kind of a good time, because they were a losing team for many years. And ever since 1915, they were just in the cellar for the most part.
Well, what I find interesting, just from a personal standpoint, is kind of the two overlaps that I have with you, which is my two favorite teams are the Yankees and the Phillies. And the reason behind that, the reason the Yankees are my favorite team is because when I started getting into baseball, like you, my best friend was from New York, and he was so influential on, you know, getting me into baseball and collecting baseball cards and following the Yankees. And of course, this was this is around 1977 when, and the Yankees won the World Series that year and the next year. So they happened to be good at the same time. So I've always rooted for the Yankees ever since. Mm-hmm. And the reason the Phillies were my favorite team is because my dad is from the Pennsylvania, Philadelphia area, and I was born and lived in Clearwater, which is where the Philly spring trained. So when I first started collecting autographs at 7 years old, it was at Jack Russell Stadium in Clearwater following the Phillies. So,
wow.
So did you, I talk about baseball cards. Did you collect cards as a kid?
I did. It was the early spring, even earlier than spring. I mean, March or the beginning of the candy store started having the packets that smelled so good. And you're opening up. I never got a Mickey Mantle. I don't know if you ever got any Yankee that you admire or any Philly drummer, but I never got a Mickey Mantle card.
No.
And that was on the way home from school. There was a candy shop, and I would stop in there with a nickel or whatever it cost at the time, and get me my new cards. And then I don't blame my mother, but I don't know what happened to them.
Yeah, the age-old story of the big box of baseball cards gets thrown away or given away, and
something,
now they could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend who has a big collection, and he's got like 40,000 cards, and they're all from this. I'm thinking, wow, he's got to have some real gems in there, like from the 20s and 15s or whatever. And they're all from the 70s and 80s. And I said, well, and they're valuable. He said, you gotta understand that there have been kids who were born then, and now they're collecting cards, or they were very young and they had their heroes, and now I got these cards, and he's managed to find a buyer for them. But you tend to forget that, to me, obviously, collectible would be some like a Christy Mathewson image of in some card or something.
Yeah, I'm not old enough to have gotten a Mickey Mantle, but I do remember wanting in 1979 when the top set was released. Like when I got the Reggie Jackson card, I thought that was just so cool. And again, ironically, I bought, I don't know, 5 years ago or so. I went back, kind of retracing my youth, and bought a 1979 box of cards.
Wow!
So keep in mind, this is 40 years later, and I still kind of had that same feeling when I opened it up and found that Reggie Jackson card all these years later. So have you seen or know anybody that has any of your like early art work, maybe even prior to you becoming more dedicated solely to baseball? Is there any of that out there that you're aware of?
No, you're one of the few.
I don't think mine are.
Well, some of it is bought at auction. Some of it was sold by my partner, who took care of all that stuff. I
know you do have that 1975 Phillies that you shared with me that you called the worst painting you've ever done.
Oh, yeah, I have. I couldn't sell that.
So you still have it?
I still have it. Yeah, I have a neighbor who wants to be an artist, and he just keeps banging himself because he doesn't feel he's up to it. And I said, everybody starts poorly. Let me show you something, and it's a great tool to inspire somebody. See how bad this is, and I got a career.
My question to you, Dick, is, after all the work that you've done, do you have a singular favorite piece? And if you don't, do you have a singular person, or subject that really excites you to paint?
Yeah, I know, not singularly. I did a small palette knife painting, Chief Bender, And it was the first palette painting just with a palette knife that I done, and it turned out really well. So that's become, I don't want to get rid of that one. And there are a few, but not one singularly, I guess. It's like somebody else does these things. I don't feel like that I'm responsible. I don't know. Maybe all artists are that way. Maybe writers are, they produce a masterpiece and they, how did I do that? And, so that's kind of what happens to me.
So I'm going to rotate to the documentary a little bit. And so this is a question for both Dick, you and for Marq. The documentary obviously is not only cementing the legacy, Dick, of you and your artwork, it's going to provide something that's going to carry that legacy on, for dozens, and maybe even hundreds of years. I'd like to hear from both you and Marq. What's your feelings about doing this documentary, and what are your expectations? What does it mean to you personally, Dick, to have this done for you?
Yeah, it's still hard to think that it's happening, and I guess a lot of baseball artists can't say that, and I think it's also not just an art story, a baseball story, but it's also an immigrant. Even though we're naturalized born citizens of the United States, you still come up here not knowing English, not seeing snow, not knowing what neighborhoods are totally crowded, as opposed to living in a house in Puerto Rico. So you're an immigrant. I mean, basically, you have to learn to adapt to a new environment. And so it's also a story of a kid from Puerto Rico who with some fortuity along the way and some hard work, achieved some success.
Marq, how about you?
So I made several prior films. The two most recent feature documentaries, one called Play Dream about famous animator named Will Vinton, who did the California Raisins and all kinds of Oscar nominated and winning short films, and then before that about a radio DJ named Marco Collins, who was the first to play the grunge music that came out of Seattle. And so I spend most of my time in documentary, not all my time, but I'm always interested in what's next, what are some new projects that I could pursue. And Dick talks a lot about fortuity and just the people that he meets and just the things that have just happened. And I kind of think of it that way too with this project, where it all came about because I guess it was 2022. My son started really getting into baseball, and most of that was because Julio Rodriguez came on the scene with the Seattle Mariners, and my son was just like, that was his first baseball hero. And, I grew up loving King Griffey Jr. So, and this is kind of part of the film too, is just these generations of baseball fans, baseball card collectors, and just, it all kind of comes full circle. But, so after he got interested in baseball, he wanted to collect baseball cards, and he wanted to look through my collection. And as we're looking through my collection, that feeling of turning some pages in the binders and seeing Diamond Kings, Dick Perez Diamond Kings, it takes me back to my childhood, and I'm thinking about that. It just had this kind of emotional resonance. And just the initial thought was, when I was a kid, I wasn't really thinking about the artist behind the Diamond Kings. I knew the name Dick Perez from that, but I just kind of was interested. So I Googled Dick's name and found his website, which is an incredible website at dickperez.com. And that's where I read about his story and got a bigger understanding of what the fact that he's painted the entire history of baseball, thousands and thousands of baseball paintings. And so, what I thought was just, I'm going to learn about the guy that did the Diamond Kings. I just realized there was much more of a story there. So pretty quickly, I thought this could be a great film because we can see the entire history of baseball through this incredible artist's work and his story. And so probably that's that day, I think I emailed Dick, found an email address, and he responded within a couple days. And I just said, hey, I'd be interested in talking to you about a documentary. And he said, sure, I'd be glad to talk. So we had like an hour and a half phone call, and I think we hit it off, and we were both excited about the potential, but it was just pretty casual how it started. I was already going to be out in New York for my previous film was opening up its theatrical run. And so I was like, why don't I stay 2 extra days and we'll shoot and see how it goes and see if we get along and what we get out of it. And that's how it all started. Tom, like you mentioned, just the fact that, this movie will live on, Dick's art will live on. But the fact that, because of Dick's art is in all these private collections, it's great that we'll be able in this film to showcase so much of his work in this one place, in this one film. And hopefully that will allow the work to live on and the movie to live on, longer than any of us.
Is the documentary going to be reflective of using Dick's work to kind of tell the visual artwork of baseball's history?
Yeah, I hope that comes across because Dick has an amazing book called The Immortals, which is, and then he's got a supplement called The New Immortals, which is baseball history from the pre-1900s, until essentially today. So that's a book that shows the whole history of baseball. We did a new baseball card set called the Diamond Immortals for this that helped fund this movie. Card number 1 is Jim O'Rourke from the 1800s, and the last card is Julio Rodriguez, the painting that you have. That's a card in this card set. So that spans the whole history of baseball. When you go to the exhibit at Citizens Bank Park in Philadelphia that you're talking about, which we shot there for the movie, you see through those paintings the entire history of baseball. It's only related to Philadelphia A's and Phillies and the Native Sons, but you see it all. It's all there. You see how it's changed. You see the uniforms and the ballparks and the representation of players. And so the movie itself, so we see it all through Dick's work and his life story. And then intercut throughout the film, we have some narration written by Joe Posnanski, who's the, in my opinion, the best sports writer in the world. He's the writer most recently of the Baseball 100 and Why We Love Baseball. So he's written these scenes that offer more about the history of baseball. And again, we see it all. We see everything through these scenes through Dick's work as well. It's all kind of visualized by Dick's work. So it's not your traditional, here's the history of baseball. But I think once you watch this film, you will have seen and felt like you lived the entire history of the game through Dick's work.
I can't wait to see it myself.
Yeah.
Just the
What better way but visually to see the evolution of the game.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's the oldest. That's why it's so popular, because it's the oldest. I mean, in the 1870s something, people started enjoying the game, and obviously everybody dressed differently then. The fans in the stand. I mean, I've got a painting of Ed Delahanty taking batting practice when the fans are coming in on the background, and it shows women with their long dress and their big hats, and they're coming to see a game. And it tells them that's real. I mean, I didn't make that up. I mean, that's
right.
Women would come to games. Women were a big fan of baseball, and you can only do that, because there was no photograph of that. I mean, I had photographs of women. I had a photograph of Delahanty batting. I just put them together, and you're seeing something from the past.
Mark, when do you expect that the film's going to be ready? People are going to be able to see it, and also want to see if there's anything else that can be done to support the initiative.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. And let me just say one more thing. You asked about what surprised me. I've been inspired by the fact that Dick wakes up every day and goes in his basement studio where he's sitting right now and paints. Maybe not painting every single day, but doing a lot of painting. Yeah. And he's painted several new paintings during the course of this movie, for the card set we made, and that's been just super cool to witness how he just, that's who he is, that's his life, and that's what he loves to do, and that's been cool to see. But yeah, the movie, we're getting close to wrapping it up. There's still a couple key parts of the shoot, but the edit's more or less done. I've got my composer working on the original score, and we're tightening up motion graphics and things like that. There's all kinds of things that have to happen at the end to finish a film. We're going to be at the National in Cleveland in late July for a couple screenings, probably in Cooperstown at the Hall of Fame at some point this summer as well. These are all things that are just kind of being lined up right now. And then I would say sometime probably in the fall or later in the year, it'll be more widely available outside of these in-person screenings where, people can watch it online.
I know you've been doing some various things for fundraising for the documentary. Is
Yeah, in documentary, you're always looking for money. It's just an ongoing thing, and that's true right now for the film, as we put these finishing touches on it. So, I mean, I guess the biggest thing would be on www.thediamondkingmovie.com. There's a little shop, and we still have postcards of the first 5 Hall of Famers designed by Dick. And a very limited amount of the Diamond Immortals card sets are still available for sale there as well too. So everything always helps as we kind of get towards that finish line to get the movie done.
Awesome. Dick, any closing thoughts or comments?
I know. I'm hoping nothing closes. It's I can't imagine what it's going to be like when the film is released. I'm sure there will be interviews to have to promote the movie and all that. That's going to take a lot of time of my time, but
it'll take you away from painting.
Right.
No, it's okay.
Then you have to learn how to do it again.
Yeah, anything to help Mark out, I would certainly do.
Dick says, hope that nothing closes. It reminds me of a line in the movie by John Thorne, who goes way back with Dick. John Thorne's the official historian of Major League Baseball, and he was a tremendous interview. And he says that, one of the great, maybe secrets of baseball, but that has a beginning, a middle, and no end.
Yeah. That's been said in a number of the different videos that I've watched on baseball. Just the difference of, I mean, in theory, the game doesn't, there's no clock. There's just all sorts of uniqueness about baseball, and that's why everybody loves it. Dick, it's been said that you not only brought art back to baseball, but you brought artists back to baseball. You've been a huge inspiration and to many people out there, including myself. So not just artists, but collectors and baseball historians, and the ability that you've had to bring your unique perspectives via your artwork to the great game of baseball, and also to not just the game of baseball, but to the hobby world. Collectors like me. You've left an incredible legacy, yet you have so much more you want to do, and I think that's just super exciting. For you and for us as your fans. Mark, thank you for being on the show with Dick. Once the movie is out, I'd love to have you both back again. But again, I appreciate you both joining us on this episode of Significance of Wealth. So for Marq Evans and Dick Perez, this is Tom Ruggie, and we'll sign off on this show.
Good. Thank you so much for having us.
On behalf of Tom Ruggie and Destiny Family Office, we hope you enjoyed today's episode of The Significance of Wealth and will continue to tune into future episodes. Connect with us at destinyfamilyoffice.com on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Reddit, and recommend our podcast on iTunes and Spotify. Until next time. The expressed views, thoughts, and opinions in this episode of The Significance of Wealth belong solely to the host and/or guests and are not investment recommendations or offers to buy or sell securities or private investments by Destiny Wealth Partners or its affiliates. This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. The funds discussed are typically for qualified purchasers, defined as $5 million of investment net worth, exclusive of primary residence.